let's start with safety. So Bilal told me that in case of an emergency, you just rush out, turn right, and then the exit is there. So, and that's outside. The topic is today the invisible diversity. The visible diversity is pretty common, yet the invisible diversity is something not that yet common. I had the chance to hear that Don Lamberg also talks about invisible diversity in different platforms, and today you're going to hear from me about the mostly psychological and the esoteric way of how I explain this. I'm going to step out some of the subjects. I'm with Kamis for the last 8 years, had the chance to work in 5 different companies. The 3 companies, including Kamis, they were startups, so I had the chance to lead the startup of the Turkey operations of Kamis and also the last 2 other companies. And that's where we met with Bilal. I come from Izmir, so Turkey is just in the middle. Izmir is on the other part of Greece. It's a very ancient city, like 8,000 years old, very beautiful with the beaches. Hometown of Homeros, and the neighboring town was the neighbor town of Thales, the father of philosophy, as we can call it. For the Christian friends, it's surrounded by the 7 churches of Revelation. That's something really magnificent. I've been to almost all the places. 12 of the 7 wonders of the world are there, especially the mausoleum in Bodrum. In the city center of Indianapolis, you see that. So they built it. This was my team from Turkey, and I always ask the question, do you know your friends at work? You always pass by, but do we know if they are something good or bad, or what are they up to in their lives? How common is that? How much do we know our friends? And I think the golden question is, how much do we know of ourselves? Because this is our situation. We try to see each other in a different way. The problem is that we see ourselves in a different way. And I'm going to talk to you about more of the psychological way of how it works. The message here is that we've got a visible and invisible world inside us. This duality is a cosmic principle. So just like our faces, we've got an invisible world inside of us. So I got 2 friends from India. You always heard about the matrix and so on, but the story is really based on the Advaita Vedanta, what they call the Maya, the illusion. I don't want to have a mystical speech today. That's another thing. We are going to do it later on. But the thing is, the visible part is not the only thing that we need to understand. There's something real beyond the visible. And we miss this in this modern verse of modernity. That's what they call the waterline of visibility. The upper part, which is like 1/9 of the iceberg, is what we see. The faces, the races, maybe the religion, the belief systems. In fact, that's the things that people can see with the bare eyes and the other 4 senses. The thing is, there is so much here. And again, that's a picture from internet. There is even much more beyond that. That's what we are missing. That's what we are not usually interested. The question is that, not only others, do we know of this invisible world inside of us? So, this illusion exists because of many reasons, and I try to portray a lot of things, but ignorance, the self-ignorance, the ignorance about the truth, dharma, just like your name, or the bigotry, falling in love, being obsessed with our ideas, lack of education sometimes, or the life is about the dance of the opposites. And this is creating the illusion, just like the 3 gunas in the philosophy. And our perception is not really the best. We don't really perceive the absolute truth. We understand it according to our mind map. There are a lot of reasons for that. So that's why we don't understand and get the reality of the others as well. Though it's a really big challenge to see the invisible world. People give messages to show it out, but we just need to read it. And in philosophy, in the Western philosophy, there's a terminology called the epistemology. That means, what can we know? The epistemology is the branch of philosophy about knowing the truth, about understanding and the limitations of what we can know. So in fact, the both Western and the Eastern studies, they talk about it. But I'll tell you a story about the invisible. Modern science says that 13.7 billion years ago, there was a big bang. Out of nothingness, something exploded. We have a lot of theories about that. The first 380,000 years, it was a plasma soup, non-duality, nothing to each other. So then the balance just kicked off. It was just disturbed, and the reality started to kick in. And then the sun and the galaxies, a lot of things formed, and then there was life. Then we came up with the Earth for the last 4.5 billion years. If you look at mysticism, religions, this is nothingness, unity, and then the duality, the opposites. It's just a plurality. The differences, the diversity starts to come in. The variety of this makes it richer, but with the ego coming in, like ahamkara, right? Yeah. Then we just fall into illusion. We forget about ourselves. We're just trapped in our bodies. Then we forget about our higher self or the one source. So I'm not talking about the one source in communist, but that becomes a self-obsession. Then the illusion starts, because the reality is there as it is. The reality is there. We just don't get it. This is the totems. That's in fact a symbol for me, like praying without any, praying with dogmas. Something like that, but we fall in love with our material possessions. The thing is, we are the children of the heavens and the world. I mean, believe it or not, but I believe in the soul, the Atman. We have it. We just have to feel it. I know a lot of people that they say, no, it's just a material world. I respect that, but according to me, we just have this. We are beings made of the spirit, the mind, and the soul. In fact, we can talk about not only the IQ, the EQ, but also there's a physical quotient. The body remembers a lot of things. Yet, like I mentioned 2 weeks ago in the communist talks, we also have a spiritual quotient that's coming from our higher self. That's the hidden asset, to be honest. And I will tell you something about the story of diversity, how we forget about it, and how we forget our, as we said, the higher consciousness, our truth. Because the essence is really our true potential, our higher self. We are born into that. Then, in this body, think about the situation of a child, the birth, and then after birth, the child starts to hear childhood messages, things that they repeat from the family, from the culture. They travel, they hear a lot of things. If you're here, like in US, there are multiple cultures. Again, they hear a lot of things. But the things that are common, these are childhood messages. Then the perceptions are acquired. The perceptions create feelings, good and bad. Because, again, the life is a dance of the opposites. We want to survive, and the baby wants to be successful. Then the baby starts to kick in with decisions they call the childhood decisions. We just put labels. This is good, this is bad. If you're raised in a bad family, you can have different labels. In a good family, you can be a son of a guru, and you can have, like good labels. But the childhood decisions, because of the need to survive, they end up with the childhood, they end up with the defense mechanisms. Because we want to survive. So each of us create personas, as they call it, the masks. Yeah. And that's what psychology is. I'm not saying this one. Most of the story happens in the first 7 years, 3/3 of our psychological development. Then the attitudes and the behaviors are there. As I said, the feelings, the values, the survivals, they all depend on emotions. Once we put things from the short memory to the long memory, and think it like a CD, we write it through the emotions. It's not carved, but it starts to change. The mind makes a decision about someone in the first 7 seconds. Then up to 30 seconds, and then it's locked. Most of the times. So if we appear in front of Tom Limberger in a bad way, that can be something that locks for the rest of our life. So but again, with people of higher consciousness, they don't fall into this trap. So we are talking for average person, and I'm an average person as well. They are in a theater in this case. This becomes a masquerade. And this story is played with emotions. It is written with emotion, it's played with emotions. So the problem is that we think like our material possessions, the things that happens in life, we just attach to that emotionally and then we personalize it. Once that happens, then the strong emotions, they dominate us. That's the problem. I like this, again, I got two friends from India. I intentionally kept the Turkish one because I don't know the English translation of that. But it says like, the soul is the driver of the body vehicle. So, I don't know if you heard it, I read the Bhagavad Gita, but if you haven't read it, it's a great thing. I mean, it's a part of Mahabharata, it's really great. And there are some symbolisms here. And I love the Vedic philosophy for this reason. The driver is the self, the ego. The horses are the earthly desires and wishes, and life is a battle, and in fact that's a battlefield. Hastinapura, that's the place, and that's a name I use a lot in my second book as well. The wheels is the time. Then the owner of the chariot behind, that's really the consciousness. And the chariot is the spirit in the earthly body. There's great symbolism. This is our life. And with this emotional attachment or identification, we fall into the trap. And the ropes is the five senses. The core process is the mind map, as they call it, which is developed in the first 7 years. Again, this 95% of the consciousness is subconscious. And the other thing is like, if you look into this graph there, when the neurological bonds they wire together, most of it happens until the age of 3. Most of it. It's possible to change any time, but once it becomes like carved, it's harder to change, but you can change it any time because there's something called neuroplasticity. And again, this mind map, once it is fixed, it's harder to change. That's why we have paradigms, that's why we have problem with invisible diversity, even with ourselves. That's a big miss. And invisible diversity, I think, is all about that. Because the future is accepted. So that's why a rectangle will mean a triangle, a circle, or something different to anyone. 7 billion people, 7 billion different perceptions. Someone who offered to marry to the wife here, this place is heaven. But someone who decided to divorce here, it's like hell. It's the same place, nothing has changed. You see, the world is better. You can think about all this beyond the religion. We have so many visible differences. And that's a variety, it's a richness. It's not a threat, it's a richness. The problem is, even for this, we fight. I mean, all through history, because of our races, faces, and so on, people killed each other, even in our religion. And that's why I feel like the invisible diversity is really important. But beyond that, if anyone who understands that herself or inner self, I mean herself, her or his inner diversity, he or she understands the others as well. Without having love, no one can show love to others. Without having confidence, you cannot show confidence to anyone. So everything is inside, nothing else. So the classical books, they always say go inside, but many of the times they don't usually talk about the inner journey, and it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to take years and years. And we can portray our inner diversity like a personality. They don't talk about 2 types of intellect anymore. They talk about, Howard Gardner says, 8 types. And in fact, he added a 9th one. If your child has a talent in music, that's also considered as an intellectual property or intellectual quotient. So it's not only 2 as before. In the past, if you didn't know math, you could have been considered like stupid. But now it's not like that. And most probably there are different dimensions. So if you have even 1 or 2, you're brilliant anyway. Or all of us have different learning styles. I'm a visual person. This perception system, if you bounce me a lot of things in a visual way, I'm going to hear you, but if you come to me with something visual, I'm with you. Or if you shoot me a lot of emails, I'm not there. But if you come and we can resolve it in just 5 minutes, that's it. So or maybe my boss is different, audio or like a bit distance, that I have to do it in a different way. So these help us to understand ourselves and not to push. You know, the Harry Potter movie, The Philosopher's Stone, the meaning of the Philosopher's Stones is vitriol, visita interioria and the Latin. It talks about visit the world inside you and you're going to find the Philosopher's Stone. It's the hidden treasure. That's your Atman, that's your spirit in fact. That's your true essence, that's our higher consciousness. It's just about that. In life, the symbolism is important, and again, we are not trained to know about the symbols as well. That's a different training. But the symbols is a method in the inner work, in the ancient systems. True self, a false identity, and the project self. It's just about having the inner journey from the project self to our true self. That's what it is. But it will take a long time. We have to make sure that we understand this. Then how we can do it? If we know something bad that we are doing, stop and act differently. Or, if we know that we have to make a change, know what to change, how to change, recognize it, stop and redo it. It's all ancient schools of inner work is just about that. Observe, stop, make it. Observe, stop, act. If you practice it long enough, it becomes a habit. So habits could be redeveloped. The self-inquiry is very important for this reason. It's hard. I mean, the hardest thing that you can do in life most probably is to put a mirror. That's why a lot of couples, they divorce. They put a mirror to each other in a harsh way, and then they divorce. You can do it in a good way, but try to do it to your boss, you're gonna have a problem. Try to do it to your sister, you're gonna have a problem. We can do it, but that's the challenge. So doing it in a nice way, that's hard. But even if you do it in a nice way, people will not get it because we want to be loved. We are seeking for identity, we want for value, and we always look for that outside. So once someone comes with a request, or I don't want to say criticism, but a feedback and so on, we just personalize it. Because something in the past, in the childhood, it comes, that was an emotional identification, it immediately comes, and we just make a reaction. Because our comfort zone is just disappearing. We become vulnerable. So that's why it is very hard to look inside. Because you will find good things, but a lot of bad things as well. I mean, when I say bad, I don't want to say really bad. It's a challenging thing. It's a development opportunity. Then once you find, you have to react accordingly to it. That's a big journey. That's a long journey. Like US, Europe, I think we are going far away compared to the rest of the world. But I think the challenge is the invisible diversity. With invisible diversity, we understand each other, and I think that's the key. This is the best key to success everywhere. Then we can understand the diversity of others, and if you understand it, it becomes like a tasteful appetite. It's like one of the best foods that you want to eat. You eat more and you want to learn more, or you want to eat more. So then we can learn from each other. And if you learn from each other, if you respect by caring and curiosity, I think there's no reason to fall apart. And then I think a lot of people can unite independent of their nations, the races, and the visible diversity. I personally treat invisible diversity more than the visible diversity. Again, I all think that it's secure, but I think the invisible diversity is the golden key. So I want you to think about a few things, because I'm coming to the end, and we can have an open chat maybe for some time. When was the last time that you feel judged? Just think about it. Can you think of any moment? I'm sure there is. But what did you feel? Is it good? Really, not right. So let's be in the other part. Huh? So what was when was the last time when we judged someone? And how did he or she feel? Because we can have a mistake, and I think good friends or good interactions mean that I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. We can make mistakes. We are humans, but if we can just go and act upon it immediately with regret and try to make a change, I think that's good enough. Some people may not accept it, but again, no one is perfect. As long as we are mean to others, I mean, if there's no evil or bad inside that, but as long as a good friendship exists, I think we can make mistakes, but we learn from that and we don't repeat. I think these 4 questions make a difference in the way we think. And the thing is, I always talk about this. They say, don't dwell so much on your past. I'd say, think about your past, learn your mistakes, but don't get stuck with it. Because you had a real life case. Think about what you could have done differently. Yes, we cannot know any kind of consequence because that's past. But if you can think about few things that you could have done differently, and just come to today, do it. If you see it works, then you learn from it. But if you're stuck there, yeah, why did that happen? This was a bad. And again, we are just falling into the trap of the past. That's not the thing. Look at the past, learn from it. Look at a living scenario. Was there anything that I could have done differently? If there is, just bring this learning today and just react. So act, not even react. In fact, respond, because even reaction is automatic, just like there is no senses in this. I hit and there's a sound. I hit and it's just automatic. And that's what human is most of the time. But if we make a choice between this hitting and the sound, then it becomes different. So I would like to ask 2 questions. And if you want to speak, I think that will be lovely so that I can, and you can learn from each other. If not, I also respect that. But I would be happy to learn, what did you learn today? And the other thing is, has there been anything that you wanted to stop, continue, or start? And if that is the case, what's your action plan? Because I believe that, yes, if you read a book, I should come up with an action for it. If I attend the training, I should have something. I should have a takeaway. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time there. It's good if I forget, then I could have be with my family. So that's my way of thinking, because everything is a vehicle to learn something, and that's what life is about, from my point of view. So if anyone wants to share, these are the 2 questions that I want to throw to the audience.